NACDL is the association of the nation's criminal defense bar.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of my client, James Smith, I'd like to welcome you and thank you. The judges and the prosecutor have already explained the process to you, but I need to explain it my way because I have a duty that's different. I have a man's life in my hands, and it's my responsibility to make sure that the 12 of you who are selected are able to be fair and impartial. It's my responsibility to pick those 12 people who are best suited for this case. I'm not judging your character. I'm not judging who you are as a person, but everybody's not suited for every case. You may be great for 99% of the cases, but 1% you might not be. I need to find out who's best suited for this case. What does best suited mean? If you're in a car accident with an intoxicated driver, you might not be the best juror for a drunk driving case. If your home was burglarized, you might not be the best juror in a burglary case. So we need to find out those things, those life experiences, those views, those feelings, those thoughts that might interfere with your ability to be fair and impartial here. So I'm going to ask you a series of questions, maybe more than the state posed, maybe more than the judge posed, maybe more than both combined. But again, I told you I have a different responsibility because Mr. Smith's life is in my hands. Let's talk about this idea of best suited. When I was a little boy, we didn't have much. We made it on a welfare check and food stamps. And my mother did great things with little. We didn't get a lot of new things, not new clothes, not new things. But one day my mother came home with new bikes. I got a blue Schwinn and my sister got a red one. And we had these new bikes and we loved them. For about 2 weeks, we rode them everywhere all day. Then one night we had to go somewhere with our mom. And we came back home through the front door and we realized the back door had been kicked in. Again, we didn't have a lot, but a lot of things we valued were gone. And our bikes were gone. That invasion bothered me. From that time on, sounds at night woke me up. I didn't sleep as well. It bothered me. To this day, it bothers me. I travel a lot for work. At 9 p.m. every night when I'm gone, I call home and I get my daughter and I have her check every door. I have her check every window on the first floor. So if I were to be selected or attempt to be selected for a burglary case, I wouldn't be a good juror. I'm not best suited. So now I need to ask a few questions to find out who's best suited. When you read my topic, the third of you thought, he crazy. A third of you thought, I might be able to vibe with that. And a third of you still on the fence. Why this topic? When I was invited, the beauty of being invited is you get to pick your topic. As Guy shared with you, I pick a lot of juries and a lot of different cases, so I wasn't sure what I wanted to talk about. So I was in a trial and the prosecutor said to me right before my opening, he said, Rick, what story are you going to entertain us with today? That was my aha moment. That's my topic. Because I use stories, analogies, metaphors in every part of my trial. Because it's my intention to own the space. It's my intention to own the room. It's my intention to own the minds of those who are hearing my voice. So you wonder why? We come from a time, and I'll talk to you about the brain portions. I'll give you all kind of other ideas, but we are a storytelling society. Oral traditions have been major in the Native community, the African community. The Jews told, their descendants to pass down our history. Storytelling. We as lawyers are storytellers, and I'll tell you about that later. Think about it. We tell war stories all the time. We tell the stories about other people's cases. We're always talking about what's going on, and we tell it in some format. So my question is, why not be more intentional about the format? So that's my challenge. Let's talk about it for a little while. I want to start with the idea of purpose, though, because I want us to get on the same page. What are some of our purposes in this jury selection process? One, to me, now I use alliteration a lot because alliteration allows me to make thoughts and ideas portable. So you'll find that when I talk at times, so just bear with me. I think the first thing we ought to do is enthrall the jury. That is to capture their fascinated imaginations. I think we ought to capture the idea. There's different conversations about in the materials. There's some great materials in this conference. There's a conversation about how you dress or what you do. There's always been the statement that you only get one time to make a good first impression. I'm a black man who tries cases in rural Wisconsin. I am very cognizant of the fact that I need to look like that client, whoever they are, just dropped me $25,000 to $50,000 to represent them. That I come from that large of a firm. Because the image of who I am is crucial. Because I have people who don't want to hear me. I have people who don't want to see me, but I need to connect. So the first thing I need to do is I need to capture their fascinated imagination. So when I walk in with my suits and my French cuffs and my pocket squares, I got you. The question is, when you walk in, do you have them? You want to get them. What's the next role? Educate. The mistake we make is we're not intentional in educating the jury. There was two conversations about whether we use legalese or not. I used to represent folks in sexually violent person cases, and the terminology is very complex. And one of the things I spent a lot of time doing was explaining the terms in what I call English. Eliminate. Whether you're a deselection person or whatever your style is, some folks got to go. Am I right? You just got to go, right? Empower. You want the jury to be your voice in the jury room. You want them to speak for you. You want them to occupy that room for you. I didn't think as much about it until I had a case where it was a we call them 980, sexually violent person case. It was in a small county, Calumet County. I was convinced I had this thing, and they were out forever. So the case is over. We do win. I go out, have all my boxes, and there's a lot of material there. So I got like 4 boxes and backpacks, and I'm taking my stuff out, and there's a pickup truck circling the parking lot. And the hood in me is like, damn, here we go. Truck stops, a juror jumps out. He says, I need to talk to you. I said, okay. He says, do you understand what took so long in the room? I said, no. He said, they decided up front, you win. But they also decided they weren't going to give it to you because you're black. And all the time we were in there, I had to convince them that it wasn't justice for you, but it was justice for the man sitting next to you. And when I heard that, I realized he was my ally. And when you get in this process, you are creating allies. I'm intentional about jury selection. I don't buy that it doesn't matter. That's for all the other people. I got 3 decades of telling you it works. I'm creating allies. When I pick them, when I open, when I question, I'm picking allies. Because I need someone in the room who speaks for me. I'm empowering them to speak for me. So, why become a storyteller? It helps you connect and captivate. Helps establish your credibility. Stories help you simplify complex concepts. You illustrate them. Stories change the flow of the trial. I want the jury to be excited when I stand up. I want them to wait to hear what I'm going to say next, what questions I'm going to pose, how I'm going to pose them. I want them to wait. I want them to be excited when I stand up. Stories educate, entertain, and empower. Why? Because you're already storytellers. I just told you. So if you look, right, and I won't go through the whole thing, but there's two things that are crucial about storytelling in terms of brains. One, it's how we think. Our brains think differently, and different parts of our brains are engaged with stories than they are with data, right? And so there's two things. One, there's a neural coupling, right? The story synchronizes the listener's brain and the hearer's brain, right? And the speaker's brain. The other thing is that they start to mirror each other, right? If you can connect, they'll buy it. Why tell a story? Because our brains, stories are universal storehouses of our knowledge and beliefs and values and attitudes and passions, right? I showed you that video for a reason. If you've ever seen the movie, and I hope you have, A Time to Kill, when the movie starts, he don't believe. It's just a case he got. He doesn't even believe in his own defense. It's just a case he got. Side note, yeah, I'm blunt, bear with me. If you can't believe, get a new job. But then he transitions to a place where he starts to get it. He starts to believe. And the passion of his belief is displayed as he starts to tell the story of his closing argument. When you speak, what you believe will come out. When you open, when you pick them, when you close, your belief will come out. It'll be on display. If you don't believe it, they're not going to believe it. You can't fake it. Too many people try to fake it till you make it. You can't fake it, right? Why stories? Because the thoughts and concepts and ideas come to life in your minds, in the minds of the listener. How many of you read books? How many prefer books to movies? The reason why you prefer books to movies, a lot of us, is because when you read the book, your life experience and your imagination paints the picture of the scenes for you. It takes you on a journey with the writer. It takes you on a journey, right? And you create vivid scenes. And you love those writers who paint pictures that conjure up thoughts and views in your imagination. That's why you love them. That's what we're trying to do with yours, right? Again, they paint pictures. And so the other thing is, why stories? And I love this part. New worlds and experiences. You're going to take jurors on a place that they've never really been. I don't care how many FBI episodes they watch. I don't care how many Chicago PD episodes they've watched. I don't care how many times they watch Law and Order. I don't care if we go back and watch some of the old stuff, right? Like LA Law. I don't care. You're getting ready to take them on a new journey. The song that says, I got your picture hanging on the wall, but it can't sing or come to me when I call your name. I realize it's just a picture in a frame. You know why? Because ain't nothing like the real thing. We're going to let them have the real thing. Why stories? First presentation we had this morning told you that we're what? Influencers. The mistake we make as lawyers is we let the DAs, the prosecutors, influence what happens in the room. Now I'm taking that. We need to become the influencers. We need to influence, right? We need to dictate the emotion of the case. We need to dictate what we want. We have to have influence over the judge, influence over the witness, influence over the jury. Again, we got to be more intentional, right? Couple quick things real quick. Stories are common ground, right? That ignite imagination, that reveal our priorities, that convey information and truth, right? They're also viral. People connect with them. People share them. People walk with them, believe in them. People use them. But they stimulate a response and action. Isn't that what we want? Don't we want something to happen in the room? Has anybody ever served on a jury in here? You're so lucky. They won't let me. Y'all like me? I walk in all cool, and I don't even dress like a lawyer, man, right? I wear like Under Armour sweats and stuff with a backpack, and I come sit in the chair. They don't even ask me no questions. And then they're like, Jones, you're excused. Bro, can I get a question? If you're going to kick me out, kick me out. I mean, come on, man. I would love to be in the room, wouldn't you? But we can't. But oh, yes, we can. We can send somebody. We can send some folks into 12. That's what we're talking about. They reveal your purpose. The other question, though, is how can you do it, right? I'm from Wisconsin. Yes, we drink a little. There was a time they used to say we had more bars than churches. We drink a little. But in Wisconsin, so I will speak in the terms of Wisconsin law. Fed folks, I don't know if anybody can help your process. But the courts prohibit, in our jurisdiction, hypothetical questions, right? But they don't prohibit illustrations, right? Because we're allowed, which is important, we're allowed to discuss attitudes and important principles and concepts. And what I offer are analogies, metaphors, and stories or illustrations that explain concepts. The other beautiful part is it tells you you get to do these things, but there's nowhere in our law that prescribes how you do it. So take that analogy back with you. You can do it. So how can you do it? Remember this. We're trying to clarify legal concepts. We're trying to explain things. We're trying to connect, right? We're trying to do some things. And so one of the things you got to understand is you want to bring the jury into the room with you. You want to bring the jury into the scene of your case. You want to bring the jury into a place where they can see and perceive, right? One of the lawyers in our office, Adam Welch, had a homicide case where these two brothers are alleged to have killed this dope dealer that they went to buy dope from. That basically the state's theory was that they went in to, quote, buy the dope, but they were intended to rob him. And they got in the car and they killed, guy ends up getting killed. But that wasn't Adam's theory. Adam's theory was it was an ambush. So I went to Adam's opening, and every few words, Adam used the word ambush. And he'd paint the picture of how they got in the car, but it was an ambush. And he's showing these scenes, but he kept saying, but it was an ambush. Man, I was walking down the street back to the office going, ambush, ambush. It stayed in my head. Eventually, the case had to be adjourned, mistrial, because jurors got COVID. When time came to retry that case, the state dismissed it. I'm convinced those words and the way Adam told that story was in their head. They knew they couldn't get that. How do you do it? You got to recognize that that a story, the most important things, what they do is they connect people with you emotionally. There are emotions that people will tie in, right? Every case has a series of emotions, whether you accept it or not. In my Chapter 980 cases, sexually violent person cases, the number one emotion is fear. Because whether you accept it or not, if I'm representing someone who's alleged to be or someone who has been and we're arguing for discharge, that's not your actually common sex offender. That's a sex offender on steroids. They've got tons of convictions. They've got tons of offenses. They've got tons of victims. That's not that simple. So jurors walk in and the first emotion they have is fear. So I have to address the fear. How do I do it? With a story. When my son was younger, he was afraid of thunderstorms. You would hear the thunder and you would hear Ricky's feet. And he'd come and he'd swan dive into the bed. Every storm, you didn't have to wait long. Storm comes. One night, terrible storm, horrendous storm. Matter of fact, one of the trees in my backyard, got hit by lightning. It was just a crazy storm, but no Ricky. So I get up and I walk to his room and I look, he's sleeping peacefully. So the next morning, having breakfast, and I said, son, it was a storm last night. He says, I know that. I said, you weren't afraid? He goes, no, Dad. I said, you were afraid last week? He says, I know that. I said, why aren't you afraid? He said, well, Dad, Grandpa said that storms happen when hot air masses meet cold air masses. Okay. That's all it took? Yeah. I said, why? So he said, it makes sense now, Dad. Ladies and gentlemen, I know you're afraid of my client. My job is to help you make sense of this. And once you really understand what's going on, and you understand how treatment works, and you understand the idea of change, you'll be less afraid. You got to recognize a couple things, though, about the emotions. One, you can create the connection with the emotion. It'll cause some engagement for you. It'll stimulate learning. It'll solidify memory. Again, it'll cause them to take action. You notice I have cause them to take action every time. Every time I want them to do something. I'm not trying to entertain you. I'm trying to use you. In street language, I'm trying to pimp you. I want you to do what I want you to do. So where do you find your stories? Him. That dude that introduced me, Guy Joseph Cardamone, is a walking store of analogies, metaphors, and illustrations. He dropped 5 good ones on us at dinner last night. In our office, we just go to his office. And in about 2 minutes, he'll give you an analogy or a metaphor that'll bring your whole case together, and you walk out all good. But y'all can't have Guy, so you got to find your own. But we got him, and we keeping him. But where do you find them? Life experiences. I just told you the story with my son. Daily interactions. Movies, books, newspapers, magazines. I just showed you a piece of a movie. Sporting events. Remember the story? Remember the football player from the Buffalo Bills? Many of you, if you don't watch football, there's a player from the Buffalo Bills. They're playing, I believe, the Kansas City Chiefs. And he goes to make a tackle. And he just, all of a sudden, he's laying on the ground. And all the announcers are sharing that it was a concussion. And I'm at home going, yeah, concussion. Makes sense. But when they replayed it, they realized that he never hit the man. He never tackled him. He never touched him. He just fell before his feet. So now they're operating on a series of assumptions. And I was operating on a series of assumptions. The medical personnel came out to start to treat him. And when they started to do some other things, we started to realize that this was not a concussion. We later found out that it was a cardiac event. Ladies and gentlemen, the one thing I ask you not to do is make a series of assumptions. Your job is to decide this case based upon the law as instructed by the judge and the application of that law to the facts as presented in this case, not based on assumptions. Sporting events. Give you a story. Social media, right? Family outings, community events. Now, I don't know about your family. Oh, you need a notebook when you kick it with my family. My family is huge, ginormous, and we got a little bit of everybody. You can get some good notes from my family. I don't know about yours. Song lyrics, right? I just gave you song lyrics a minute ago, right? You can find illustrations in anything, right? Podcasts, which Guy turned me on to, other lawyers, trials, right? Let's be realistic. We borrow from each other, right? Is there anything wrong with that? Isn't that why we're here? To borrow from each other? Isn't that why we want to hear, the folks who are coming? Like Melanie Footage tomorrow, right? I will make sure I'm in that chair. Matter of fact, I'll be here all day tomorrow because I came to borrow some stuff that's going to help me, right? So I want to talk a little bit about this one. I want to give you an example of something in jury, a jury concept that you can use. You live in a neighborhood where folks across the street, their home was burglarized, right? It's the first thing you feel. Anyone? First thing you feel when you hear that, right? A little scared? Then you learn that the house next to them was burglarized. Now you learn that the house to your left is burglarized. What do you feel? Anybody? Insecure? Now you hear that the house on your right was burglarized. How do you feel? My house is next. But then on the news, they report that they caught the person. What do you feel? What did you just presume? The law presumes that every person charged with the commission of a crime is what? Until beyond a reasonable doubt. Right? That was a simple one, right? You can use that in jury, right? In jury selection, right? I told you the fear one. How about butterflies? Remember I talked about change for my 980 cases? True story. I was sitting on my porch one day, hanging out with my girlfriend. My girlfriend's my iPad, by the way. My kids gave my iPad that name because I take my iPad everywhere. So even when I pack, my daughter be like, "Dad, you got your girlfriend?" I'm like, "Yeah, she right here. We good." So I'm sitting on the porch, I'm reading and listening to music, and all of a sudden this butterfly comes. This butterfly is just flitting around, and it's beautiful. It's got some black and some orange. That's why I wear a tie. It's beautiful. It's just flittering around, just flitting around, just flitting around. It's beautiful, right? Then another butterfly comes, but it has different colors. Then a third comes, and they're just flitting around, and I'm like enamored with these butterflies. I'm a city kid, so I'm like digging these butterflies. They just bouncing around, and then all of a sudden, they're gone. But I'm curious to know why the butterflies don't all look the same. So, no worries, I Googled it. Butterflies go through a process. They go through a stage where they go from pupa to, larva to adult, right? And it's that process that gives them their coloring. All of their process is not the same. The process is called metamorphosis. Metamorphosis is a profound internal change that they undergo. The man who sits next to me has undergone a profound internal change. And the question for you today is whether or not you believe that people change. Simple, right?
The CLE verification code for this program is LOD222. LOD222.
What's the goal of our stories? Let me summarize it, and then I'll give you a couple more, and we can go home. It's been a long day. Engage, persuade, inspire, magnify memory, amplify meaning, right? Cause your audience to retain your message. When we start talking about legalese and concepts and ideas, they might not grab them the way we want them to grab them, but if you can use an illustration, an analogy, or a metaphor, it will help them to comprehend, right? It'll magnify the memory and amplify the meaning, and it'll also allow them to retain that message. They'll get what you were trying to say. But then also you'll cause them to apply your message. Cause your audience to relate emotionally, right? One of the things that we have to be careful of is we allow the system to create the notion that all the emotions in the trial attach to the victim. That's not always true. If the man or woman sitting to my left is in that chair, there's some emotions in there, aren't there? Fear, anxiety, worry, aren't there? Frustration, anger. I'm sorry, if I'm falsely accused, I'm gonna be pissed. But no matter what's sitting in that chair, we deal with a group of people whose voices have never been amplified in society. We deal with the least of these, the left out. We deal with the folks that nobody cares about. And your job is to tell their story in a culturally humble way. Your job is to tell a story, but you don't know the story if you don't get the story, if you don't spend time. But once you know the story, you know the drama that came with the story. You know the pain, you know the fear, you know the issues. And when you have that, somehow you got to put that on the table. You can't just let we throw the victim out and then all of a sudden, he's public enemy number one. She's public enemy number one. No. His family's worried too. He's afraid too. Put it out there. You increase their motivation to do justice. I do sign every letter in pursuit of justice. Why? Because of something that happened to my uncle when I was a kid. I'll tell you. My uncle was a police officer. It's the only job he ever wanted in his life. He was sitting in a golf course area right in parking lot facing a street writing a report. Man runs up to the car and says, I got an emergency, I got to run home, can you take me home? My uncle gets all of his information, date of birth, address, he radios all of it. Description of the man, takes the man home. He gets back to the parking lot, they call him and say, they radio a bank robbery. They get the description, my uncle says, that's the man I just took home. My uncle goes and gets the man, convinces the man to tell him where the money is, takes the man and the money to the police department. Hero, right? Not where I'm from. They charged my uncle party to a crime bank robbery. It destroyed him. I remember going to court with my mom and my aunts and my grandma, and they cried all the way to court. They cried all the way home. They cried during court. It destroyed him. And I vowed as a kid, I'll be damned if I let the system destroy somebody else if I can prevent it. So that's my motivation, and it comes out. My pursuit of justice comes out. Yeah, I got an attitude, I can. But we ought to have some attitude. Not what your personality is. My style is smooth, but I'm serious. Again, what I told you, we want them to do something, right? So how do you develop your stories? One, you got to know your audience. How many people took public speaking? Rule number one, public speaking is what? Know your audience, right? Do you know them? I told you, I'm a black man who tries cases in rural Wisconsin. I don't go to the urban cities because they don't need me. I'm a senior lawyer. We have a lot of young lawyers up north who can't handle some of the more serious cases, so they send me. I'm traveling through counties that have flags that I don't like, signs in their yards that look crazy. I'm traveling through counties where 70% of the time, some police officer is going to follow me. When I used to drive my own car, they pulled me over, but then I got a state car. So when they figure out it's a state car, I'm a state employee, they'll follow me for a while, but they won't. But I get followed all the time. And I'm trying cases in a county where people have to, where they've never seen me or anybody who looks like me. And I have to know them. We do a lot of research on jury lists. I ask a lot of questions of lawyers who live in the counties. I ask a lot of questions of staff, because I don't want just information from lawyers. Actually, some of my best information comes from secretaries. I ask a lot of questions, because I need to know these folks, or as much as I can know them. Once you know your audience, you got to figure out what your message is, right? Each analogy, you don't have to write this down. Jero has it, and I'll beg him to give it to you somehow. You don't have to write this down. You can have the whole PowerPoint. I told you, we steal from each other. Borrow from each other. It's not really stealing if I give it to you, right? Okay, good. You got to know your core message. What's your message for each story, each analogy, each metaphor? What's the message you want them to get? Because that determines what you tell them, right? Because once you know the message, right, you got to then know what action you want them to take once they get the message, right? You might just simply want them to be open-minded. I learned something crazy. It's kind of funny. Once in a while, there are those folks who believe in something greater than racism. They believe in apple pie, baseball, and the flag. And when I can find those folks, I got to sell that. But I got to know who I'm talking to. I got to have this call to action. I got to know what I want them to do. And then you got to decide what story you're telling to do those things, right? To address the audience that you have, to define, to meet your core message, and to get your call to action. Then you got to plan and structure your story. Here's the important part. You have to do it according to who you are. If you do it or try to do it anything else other than according to your personality, you will be inauthentic and fake. Just be you. You're better at being you than anybody else, right? Whatever your personality is, whatever your style is, when you're with your friends and you laughing and joking, you tell stories, right? But you tell according to who you are. Trust me, who you are is good enough, man. The authentic you is the best you. So you got to just tell and talk and share according to who you are. And if you do that, you're good. It'll be an amazing time, right? So you got to plan and structure the story according to how you think, how you talk, and how you present, right? Write it. Let me see if this is the word Guy would use. I'm obsessive in my preparation. I don't know. I don't know why. I write everything. That's not true. I type everything. 8th grade typing. 8th grade typing, you had to 60 words a minute with 4 mistakes, I think it was, on a manual typewriter. Ding! One of them, not electric. I was not jacking my GPA for some stupid typing class. So that's the only class in the history of life growing up that I stayed after for and went on Saturdays for, so I could learn how to type. So when computers came out, man, I'm lightning, I groove, right? But I write everything out. I do. You need to write it out because you need to be able to write it and revise it, edit it, cut it, change it, add to it, write it, right? Because once you've got it written, you got a decent draft, share it. You share it 3 ways. 1, share it with colleagues. Let your colleagues critique. That's why we go to his office. He fixes our stuff. And I'm way older than him, but I need him. He fixes our stuff. But we got other colleagues. One of the things that Guy created in our office is brainstorming. We do it regularly, formally, informally. We brainstorm all the time because we want the best, because you get a lot. And let me say this, as a senior lawyer, I don't have some type of arrogance that I believe I know everything. I'm starting to learn some really cool stuff from young lawyers. I dig young lawyers. They see things ways I don't see them. And I like that. So you got to share it with the folks around you. That's first. Second, share it with non-lawyers. My best non-lawyer is my mother. If she tilt her head to the side, the next 2 words out of her mouth are gonna be, "You tripping." I be like, "Ma," she's like, "You tripping." "Ma, no, you tripping. You need to redo this." And then you revise it and get it tight. And then the third place you share it is with the folks in front of you. Yes, we're talking about jury selection, but also if it's different stories, you want to share it. So here's an example. Anybody ever seen that before? That picture? I use purple with everything, bear with me. I'm a member of Omega Psi Phi fraternity. It's my favorite color, so I use it everything, so bear with me. Anybody ever seen that before? Because you can see different things, right? What are at least the 2 you see? An old woman and a young woman, right? Ladies and gentlemen, the law, as you have been instructed and will be instructed again, provides that if you can reconcile the evidence upon any reasonable hypothesis consistent with innocence, you should do so and find my client not guilty. That means the state might give you a young woman, and we gave you an old woman. But if you see them both, you have a reasonable doubt. And you must find my client not guilty. Right? In jury selection, explains that concept, right? Them cats fly right there. You gotta admire, they fly, right? I like clothes. So, ladies and gentlemen, the state bears the burden of proof. They must prove every element of every offense beyond a reasonable doubt, right? Every offense has elements. Let me see if I can explain what I mean. My client, as he sits here or she sits here, is clothed with the presumption of innocence. It's like putting on my overcoat. In order to overcome that presumption or to take that coat off, the state has to meet the burden of proving every element. Consider that each of the buttons is an element. And if the state does not unbutton every one beyond a reasonable doubt, they've not met their burden of proof, and they can't take the coat off. Right? Make sense? Yeah, I come up with stuff. It's crazy. Can I just give you my old man thought? I may not look as old as I am, but I am. I have been practicing law over 3 decades. We have to change the worldview and opinions and emotional responses of people. When I started practicing law, the system was about rehabilitation and destroying this concept of recidivism. We wanted to change and impact people's lives so that they didn't come back. And down through the years, particularly probably about 1980, and well, actually later than that, down through the years, Crime became a political platform. And we changed it. We stopped giving people an opportunity to work their way out by going through rehabilitative programs. We eliminated treatment. We eliminated educational programs. We eliminated other social programs. And what we did was we basically said, we're going to warehouse you. And we created things like truth in sentencing. And now we just send men and women away without thought for the future or thought for their lives. We have to change, and there has to be a paradigm shift. We have to go back to caring about what's best for our clients. We got to stop arguing on the state's ground. When the state says it's about this penalty, we got to challenge the penalties. We have to start to argue that what's important to us is the fact that this person has some issues. And we got to start fashioning sentences that address those issues so that we impact their lives positively and they don't come back. So the goal of our representation and our presentation has to be to reshape worldviews, opinions, and emotional responses. And I think if you use illustrations, analogies, metaphors, I think you can do that. Storytelling is an effective learning tool, but it drives behavior change. You'll know that your stories, analogies, and metaphors were productive because they're repeated and they cause somebody to act. Don't be closed-minded. Try it. Think about it. Use it. I'll leave with this. When he was younger, Michael Jordan dunked on everybody. He just went to the rim. But after a while, he started realizing that just dunking everybody wasn't going to work. The Detroit Pistons taught him that was painful. So he learned a jump shot. Then as he got older, he realized that he couldn't drive like he could. He couldn't just shoot where he wanted, so he developed a post game. When he was skinny and getting beat up, he discovered weights, and he got muscular. When it was just him, he shot all the time. But when he got Scotty and some other folks, he changed how he played. What am I telling you? It's called the practice of law because you never perfect it. The law is changing, evolving. Your skill set and your game has to change. So that's what I'll leave you with. Change your game. Thank you.